We need to hear their voices. The Yes campaign, from the beginning of the campaign in basically in January 2023 up until the end, kept using the figure 80% of Indigenous Australians want this. 80% of Indigenous Australians want this. It was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. The only thing is they got that 80% figure from a survey of 300 Indigenous Australians in January, and then they kept running that number all through the year without really bothering beyond March to survey them. And anyone who was thinking a little more deeply about this was asking, wait a second, why aren't you surveying Indigenous opinion to see if it's changing along with non-Indigenous opinion? Everyone was saying it's 80%, it's 80%, assuming that Indigenous Australians are no more capable of changing their mind on things than non-Indigenous Australians. It was sheer propaganda. And what we discovered on the eve of the actual referendum was that, in fact, Indigenous opinion had changed, and it had declined quite significantly. So the Age published a poll showing that Indigenous support was around about 59%. The Financial Review published a poll taken by the UK poll group Focal Data, which surveyed Australia and broke the results up into electorates. And so what the Financial Review did, it looked at the results in the electorates with the highest numbers of Indigenous minorities and found that in Australian electorates, federal electorates, with the highest number of Indigenous minorities, the no vote was ahead in all of them. And so while Indigenous opinion on The Voice was declining over the course of the year, just like non-Indigenous opinion was, the Yes case continued to push that figure of 80%, which it gathered in January. It never cared about what Indigenous Australians thought of this voice. It got its 80% figure early on, before the national debate really started, and just ran with it regardless of what Indigenous Australians thought. And I thought that was just a disgusting thing that they did. That was disinformation.
Well, you can see where they went wrong. Early on, they had a sort of a constitutional convention, I guess you'd call it, at Uluru, but it was only people who were all of one mind. And so you got groupthink very early on, and they didn't want to dispel this. I mean, we know the phenomena of groupthink, where you get people together in a room and everybody pats one another on the back and says, what a brilliant idea. And then when things go horribly wrong, they say, why didn't I raise an objection? But that's what happens. That's why you need a constitutional convention. That's why you need to allow every voice to be heard. And yet, of course, right from the get-go, anybody who raised dissent against this idea was racist or stupid, right? They were a dickhead or a dinosaur, you know.